Okay, I have no idea if anybody's gonna care about this, but I care about it, so I'm making a video on it. The Blade movie has a casting call that's going on right now for a woman of North African descent, and she's supposed to play a significant role in the film. Now, given everything that we know about Blade, which is almost nothing so far, but the fact that Blade was talking to Dane Whitman as a post-credit scene in the Eternals, all that kind of stuff, there's only one person that comes to mind. And I'm not the only one guessing this. A lot of other people are speculating as this person as well. That is Faiza Hussein. Okay, if it's this girl, it's a whole different beast, right? So this girl's name was basically Excalibur, right? That was the code name she used. Here's kind of a fun fact, by the way. Black Knight, Dane Whitman, he's descended from Sir Percy of Scandia, right? He's one of the original Knights of the Round Table. Like, all that stuff exists in the comics, and it exists in the MCU now, presumably, right? Like King Arthur, Camelot, Guinevere, Merlin, Excalibur, the Knights of the Round Table, all that kind of stuff. That's all real. In the comics, it's all in Otherworld, right? But like, it's all basically a thing that presumably exists now. What would be hilarious is if they brought in King Arthur and the Knights of Justice. Do you guys remember that cartoon show from back in the day? The show was terrible, but the intro slapped. But the important thing here, right, back on track, I don't want to digress too bad. Faiza is an absolute hoss, right? This girl has done so much stuff. She killed Dracula at one point in time using Excalibur. She was an agent of MI13. She was basically the steward of Dane Whitman, and in fact, they had a kind of thing going on for a little while. Like, there's a lot of history there, right? So the big question to ask here is, if they're casting this girl in Blade, does it matter, right? Like, is this a girl that we should concern ourselves with? Like, is she a powerful person or anything like that? Absolutely. Okay, so here's the idea behind Faiza, right? Here's the whole thing behind her character. And maybe we'll probably end up doing like a full-on character explanation on her over at Comics Explained once her name gets dropped. But the thing about this is she debuted in Secret Invasion, right? Now, a lot of you guys know about Secret Invasion, if for no other reason than the fact that it's like the next big event the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing. It's getting a TV show. Presumably that show will cross over with other aspects of the MCU. The Secret Invasion event was huge when it happened in the comics, so I have a hard time believing it'll just be confined to a show and that'll be it, because literally the Secret Invasion event was essentially humanity learning that the Skrull race had been replacing superheroes like Captain America and like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Iron Man and people like that, like big names, right? It wasn't like Secret Invasion was an event that involved like Alpha Flight from Canada, right? If you guys don't know who they are, that's fine, that team sucks. But the thing here is that Faiza debuted during that storyline. Now, the whole idea of Secret Invasion was a worldwide event, right? It wasn't just in the States, right? Skrulls were replacing people all over the world. And so while you had like the big battle of New York with like Nick Fury and like Daisy Johnson, Quake, of course, a lot of you guys probably know her. She was played by Chloe Bennett in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., different things like that. You had pretty much like the traditional Avengers roster, New Avengers, Mighty Avengers, so on and so forth. Over in London, you had Faiza, who was basically a doctor, right? Like she was a field medic that was treating people when like this great big huge battle and everything was going on. During this whole conflict, initially Dane Whitman had been incapacitated and that Faiza tended to his wounds, but they were both hit by what was basically this massive source of energy from the Skrulls. What it did is it granted her these powers that gave her the ability to essentially manipulate and deconstruct matter on the atomic level, organic and inorganic alike, it doesn't matter. And so in this instance, Dane Whitman had suffered from injuries. She was able to use her powers to basically restructure his body, right? To like fix broken bones, different things like that. Because by way of her powers, she intuitively knows how things are supposed to work, right? So say for example that you ran up on Faiza and you said, my arm is broken, right? Like my arm is totally shattered into like 20 pieces. Is there anything you can do, assuming that you weren't in so much pain that you would just pass out from shock, right? That you were somehow capable of telling her this, then literally she would examine your arm and then she would basically reconstruct your arm because she would know exactly how your arm was supposed to look, right? How your bone, I mean, bones are pretty, for the most part, universal, but you guys get what I mean, right? And she can do this with both organic and inorganic matter. So like, if she came over to your house and accidentally knocked over a priceless vase, she could restructure it, right? She knows exactly how it's supposed to look. So that kind of a thing. Now, why does this matter? Because while I wouldn't go as far as to say that she's going to have an initial introduction alongside alongside Dane Whitman, otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to have her in Blade. She's going to be alongside Blade. The fact that she wielded the Excalibur sword in the comics, the fact that she killed Dracula with Excalibur in the comics, all points to this idea that, like, because MI13 in the comics was basically the British government's version of a team that faced off against supernatural threats, that she would go in and fight alongside Blade. And she would be a huge asset to fight alongside Blade. Now, whether or not she's going to be there for the long term, we don't know. We don't even know if she's going to have any powers. We simply just know that she's there, right? It could just be that she's going to be someone akin to Rosario Dawson when she played Night Nurse on the Netflix series for like Daredevil and all those different shows, right? So literally she's there, like Blade is injured and she's like the attending medic for some reason or whatever it is, and like maybe she treats people who have powers in the same way that like Night Nurse treated superheroes and different things along those lines, right? Who really knows here? The important thing is that she's going to be in this movie. The fact that she's here means they can build on her. They can turn her into something bigger. We already know with Blade and then with Ghost Rider scheduled to show up in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, we know Werewolf by Night is getting a show, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is already building up to like the Midnight Suns, right? We know we're already getting that. It's only a matter of time before we see a completed team. I mean, literally, fighting them in the MCU have been like, yeah, man, Midnight Suns is coming, right? And I am so excited. I'm so excited about the Midnight Suns. I love Midnight Suns, right? It's such a phenomenal, it's a great team, right? MI13 is the British version of that, right? Like they face off against superhero threats. Not the traditional Midnight Suns roster, but dealing with like monsters and different things along those lines, vampires and stuff like that. MI13 handles that. And so while I wouldn't really go as far as to say that having Faiza Hussein in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Blade is gonna be like the stepping stone to her leading her own superhero-based team, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe expanding, especially doing it overseas. Then when you take into account the idea that like she had fought alongside Captain Britain a few times, now you got Brian Braddock that you could throw into the mix. But with regards to the confines of her involvement with Blade, it'll only ever really go one of two ways. Either she will have something of a role where she already has her powers, or she's like an attending medic or something like that, where she's like the equivalent of Chris Christopherson's Whistler from like the Wesley Snipes Blade movies, if you guys remember that. She plays a role similar to that, not really the tech side, but like the healing side, helping him get over his injuries that he sustains and things like that against vampires, if his healing factor is simply just not working fast enough and so on. Or she's going to be someone who's just kind of there, she plays some sort of a role in some capacity that we really don't know what it's going to be, without any kind of powers or any involvement in Blade himself. But the fact that they're saying that it's supposed to be a role of significance, a role that's supposed to be pretty big in the film, indicates that she probably already has her powers. Now, will her powers be on the same level as they are in the comics? Probably not. And it's not really just because of the fact that the MCU is sliding Faiza or anything like that. That's universal across the board. Nobody in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is ever as powerful as they are in the comics. That's why, as much as we would love to see like the actual World War Hulk, right? Like Worldbreaker Hulk, or even like Heart of the Monster Hulk, who was powerful enough to shatter dimensions, even though we want to see somebody like that, we'll probably see it, just not on the same level, which really begs the question, why even do it at all, right? That's universal across the board when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They're never as powerful as their comic book counterparts. So I imagine Faiza would likely just have the ability to heal, and that'll basically be it, right? She'll have the ability to heal other people, and that's really all there is to it, right? And then she would basically follow Blade around, right? Help him out on different adventures and skirmishes and conflicts and so on and so forth, and like that would basically be it, right? You know, she would treat his injuries, and the two of them would kill vampires together, and maybe he saved her from a vampire or saved her from Dracula or something like that, and like that's all you really get from the character. But she's just kind of a side along, right? Just being there alongside Blade. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section though, because I feel like having her there is great. Because one of the things that I love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I've loved it since the beginning, is they take obscure characters and they make them popular, right? They make them great. Like none of you guys would have heard of Echo if you didn't read Marvel Comics, right? That's just the way that it is, right? Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe had to convince people that Iron Man was not a robot. Most people had no idea who Bucky Barnes was. Most people knew of Black Panther, but had no knowledge of Black Panther's history in the comics in terms of like Wakanda, the Necropolis, right? Like Ulysses Claw, all that kind of stuff. So it's cool to see them take these elements and just bolster them up and turn them into something cool. But let me know what you guys think. Does the character of Faiza sound cool to you? Do you want to see her? Do you not really care? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.